So, a little recap from the last two videos of how we became nomadic. We sold the house, sold everything in it, sold the car, all in February 2017. Bought a motorhome in March 2017, and then travelled around France, Spain, Portugal. That was it. Some of the UK. Then sold that in 2023. It will have been, February 2023. And then have nothing. No house. We do have a car. Woohoo! Nothing flash. It's an old car. It's a 2011 plate. It does its job. It gets us from A to B. If you wonder why I'm wearing sunglasses in the house, it's because I'm sat at patio doors. It's windy outside, otherwise I'd have sat outside, but you wouldn't hear a thing. But the sun's shining straight on my face, so you can see the patio doors in my glasses. Bit of a cloudy sky, look. Anyway, so when we actually sold up everything, or just before we sold up, Kev's argument to me was to try and get me to go ahead with it, because I really didn't want to do it. I didn't want to sell the house and live in a motorhome that I'd never been in, never driven a motorhome, never slept in one, slept in a few caravans, but that was a holiday, so I thought we'd give it a go. But he said, Tina, I've been alive for 56 years. I'm not going to be alive for another 56 years. He said, I've got more years behind me than I have in front of me. I said, and I don't want to waste them by working, and if I don't need to. He said, don't get me wrong, if we hadn't sold the house, we would have had to work, but we were lucky we bought the house in the 1980s, and we had quite a bit of equity in the house, and my mum died, left me enough money to buy the motorhome, so we knew we'd be okay, and we said if we could get 10 years out of travelling, then we'd be happy. That was 2016. And fast forward to, it will have been February 2024. We were in Morocco. We'd been backpacking around Morocco. And if you've seen on my other post, Kev, if he hasn't got his glasses on, he'll just pick whatever's to hand. So he was in the shower, couldn't find his pile cream, because he'd had piles for years, couldn't find his cream, and saw a little tube, decided to have a go. That was my eye cream. So I knew that he needed some more pile cream, but by this time I thought, do you know what, I've been to so many shops over the years to buy in pile cream, I thought, this is no good. And he said, no, he said, I do need it, Tina. He said, because they feel as though it's cut. He said, or the bleeding, or he said, but there's no blood. So I said, right, enough of this. I need to see it. I need to see what I'm buying cream for. I said, because it might not be piles. He's like, I'm not showing you my backside. I was like, by this time we'd been married, 39 years? 38 years. No, 39 years it'll be, because it's 41 this year. And I said, you know, what if I see something I've not seen before, I'll shoot it, as my grandma used to say. So there he was. So embarrassing. Not for me, I don't care. He literally had to drop his pants, bend over, and part his cheeks. Ooh. But what I saw wasn't a pile. It was about the size of, I don't know, maybe a 5 pence, 10 pence piece. So probably about so big. And it was red. There was no skin on it. So it was quite raw looking. And it had a tiny, as though someone had just got a little pen and pricked it, a green pen in the middle. And I said, right, I need to photograph this. Shock, horror on his face. So I've gone from showing you my backside to now you want to photograph my backside. He said, don't you dare put it on Facebook. So you never saw any of these photographs, but I did have to photograph it regularly just to see how it was going. So I took a photograph of it, and luckily where we were staying, we were in Essaouira in Morocco. Absolutely beautiful place. Got a gorgeous apartment. Anyway, there was a really nice pharmacy at the side, very clean looking. So I went in there, and it was a guy. He was the pharmacist, and he spoke really good English. So there I am with my phone. Can I just show you this, please? So there I am showing him. I didn't show him his full bum. I just showed him the saw as such, and I just said, "Look, I don't know what this is. My husband thinks it's piles. Obviously, it's not piles. But have you got something that he could put on it?" And he gave me this antifungal. Well, he said it was antifungal cream or antifungal powder. He said, but the powder's probably best because I could just squeeze the powder on it rather than touching it. Squeeze the powder on it and it would dry it up. Perfect. Job done. So there I was, every day in Morocco, morning and night, squirting this powder onto this open wound on his backside. But after, I don't know, 2 or 3 days, I took more photos, and I could see that this tiny green dot had got a lot bigger. And it had this weird smell to it. Not sure what it was. It wasn't pungent, but you could smell something, and it was getting quite painful. So I had to get him 400 milligrams ibuprofen. So he was taking those every day, which, I mean, they're not good for your stomach unless you've got a stomach liner like Lanzaprazole. So I had to get him those as well. Plus I'd got cocodamals on me, because at that time I wasn't taking my collagen, so I was in quite a bit of pain with the arthritis in my knees, so I always had to have cocodamals with me, and now my collagen, I don't need to take them anymore, but that's another thing. I'd be lost without that. Anyway, so I said to him, look, why don't we go back to the UK and get it checked out? Go to the doctors. I think we'd got about another week, maybe 10 days to go. But no, he didn't want to go back. He said, we've got a flight booked, we'll go back on that flight. So he just kept popping the pills, and I kept squirting this powder on, and he was having to wash it day and night, because it was sore. It's very sore. And we knew it wasn't piles, but you don't want to think the worst. So we left it. And I did like what most people do, and I consulted Dr. Google. And I can't say it confirmed, but it put it into my head that it could be cancer. So we got straight into the doctors, and we both went to see him. And the doctor was a male doctor who had been colorectal. He'd been a colorectal doctor previous to this in a hospital. And he looked at it, and he said, it doesn't look great down there, because by this time it was sort of a lot bigger. And he took a swab and sent him to the hospital. The process was painfully slow. In the meantime, he's just in pain. This hole was getting bigger and it started leaking. So he was having to wear sanitary towels, which wasn't the greatest. But he coped, and he survived on 30 milligrams cocodamol and 400 milligrams ibuprofen every day, 3 times a day. When I think back, he started taking so many painkillers, but deep down we both knew what it was. We just, well, we didn't say the words, I suppose, but I think I'm one of these. I always look on the bright side. Kev, I'm a glass half full, he's a glass half empty. So he said, I think it's cancer. And I said, don't be like that. You don't know. Wait until we get the test back. You've no idea. Oops, you're getting a flash of the cleavage there. So, to cut a long story short, it was cancer. But some people get cancer and don't even know they've got it. they have a random test and it's like, oh, you've got cancer. Kev really knew he'd got cancer. He was in excruciating pain for a long time. He couldn't sit down on his bum. He was always leaning over sideways, just couldn't sit on his left bum cheek. He was going to football games, taking his little bag with him, and in his bag he's got wipes, sanitary towels, nappy sacks to dispose of the sanitary towel. He said, I never thought I'd see myself at half time going into the men's toilets at a football pitch and having to change my sanitary towel. Look, he's been very strong throughout this, and we've both been very positive and upbeat, and we have a dark sense of humour. So we've always sort of laughed about it, made jokes about it. But this saw became a hole, and it started eating away at his buttocks, basically. I think at its largest, it was probably about so big, the full circle of that, from the outside, and it was all raw. And it was diagnosed as squamous cell carcinoma, which is quite an aggressive cancer. And it got, you could see like the little white cells on it, like ulcerated. So yeah, it was in a lot of pain with it. But the thing was, it smelt, and I mean, it smelt like rotting flesh. So he was always conscious of somebody being able to smell him, but he was in agony. And at one point, he was going through 6 showers a day, and sometimes it could be more than that, and he could have 3 during the night because it leaked this fluid, and it burnt him. This fluid burnt him, so he was in so much pain, bless him. And he went into hospital. He'd been in a few times, to be fair, but he went into hospital because we couldn't get his pain levels under control. And I said, this is just getting ridiculous now. I'd put in a few complaints. He went through chemo radiotherapy, taking, this was before he'd gone in, so he'd gone through the chemo tablets and radiotherapy once a week for, I don't know how many weeks it was. I don't know if it was 12 weeks, 16 weeks. And it burnt him. And when I say burnt him, his groin looked as though someone had taken a blowtorch to it. And and I had to rub cream on it, which didn't give him any satisfaction whatsoever, nor me. He was in agony with it. He's been through such a lot of pain. By this time, he was on Oromorph as well, and then he was on Zomorph, which are morphine tablets and morphine medicine for the breakout pain. Then he was on amitriptyline, which is a nerve pain tablet. He was dosed up to high heaven, and we just got sick of it. And he ended up going into hospital because he was in so much pain. And they said, right, we're gonna keep him in. We're gonna get his pain meds under control, and then we'll let him out because he was awaiting an operation. And when he went in, they said they would do a biopsy. So they went to take a biopsy, but they said while they were there, the surgeon had said that the cancer had channeled itself through his buttocks. So through this sort of big hole, it channeled itself through his buttocks, and it was going internal. And he said, you need a temporary stoma. He said, you must be in absolute agony when you go to the toilet. And he said, I am. He said, right. He said, I'm booking you in for a stoma. So he had the stoma done in the December 2024. And I think he came out the Christmas Eve then. And he looked dreadful. But they'd let him out. As long as he could change his stoma back twice, he was okay to be released. So they let him out. And bless him. I used to cry sometimes because I'd see him in pain and I think there's nothing I can do for him apart from give him his tablets and some fluid to take them with. And and tempers were fraught at times because, you know, it's like when you're in pain, he's got quite a strong, well, not quite, he's got a very strong pain threshold as Kev. But the pain was so intense, and he'd sit and he'd rock and he'd rock and he'd rock. And I wanted to take that pain away, and I couldn't. It was hard. And he'd get annoyed and he'd say horrible things and he'd be very sharp with me. And then he'd apologise and say, I don't mean it. I'm just in so much pain. But at the time, I just wanted to tell him to go forth and multiply, as in F off. But it was hard trying to think that he's in pain and he doesn't mean any of this. When he's basically telling me to piss off and leave him alone. And if I had done, he'd have been dead by now. I have been his carer for a long time, been his carer throughout this. Anyway, he came out Christmas Eve, and we'd rented a house out in North Yorkshire, and he came up, and we'd actually celebrated Christmas on the 22nd of December that year, when he was in hospital and he wanted to come home to celebrate with us. And I said, you're not well enough to Kev, you need to stay in. So he did. And I know it's awful, but I'm glad he did. And I'm glad we celebrated it without him. We had a fantastic Christmas that year. That sounds awful, doesn't it? But we had an amazing Christmas. We had got family around. It was an old cottage. It was all really old-fashioned. But it got a big open fireplace, and we put stockings up and had the fire going. We had family round. There was about 12 of us around the table, and it was amazing. We had Christmas songs playing. Oh, it was so lovely. And then Kev came home on Christmas Eve, and Christmas Day we weren't celebrating it because we'd already had it. Mainly because my granddaughter was going down to a dad's on Christmas Eve, so we wanted to celebrate it early with her. But Christmas Day was it was a write-off. Kev was in bed. He was in pain. He was constantly up again, taking showers, baths. That was the only thing that relieved the pain as well. If he could get in a bath, he'd just slide in and go, oh. And he's not a bath person. He loves the shower. But the bath was his saviour. But yeah, the pain kicked in again, and he was getting frustrated with this new stoma that he'd got. So that Christmas Day was pants. So we went with our daughter and her partner Nick. So Steph and Nick said they were going to go out for a walk over the moors, and said, why don't you come with us, Mum? And I said, no, you go, your day, you go. Anyway, they talked me into it. So I made, with the leftovers of the Christmas dinner, I made a Christmas Day dinner soup, and we put it into flasks, and we took mince pies, and we went over the moors. It was grey, miserable, blustery, but it was fantastic. We had a long walk, we got to some waterfalls, and we sat down and had Christmas dinner soup, and then had mince pies for afters, and it was so lovely. And all this time he was laid there in bed. Boxing Day was fine. Then in January he went in for his operation, and I was at my cousin's at the time, the day that he'd gone in, and she'd gone to the hairdresser, so I got there with her, and I was sat there, and I knew he'd gone in for his operation, and it was about an hour and a half, 2 hours into it, and I got a telephone call from the surgeon saying, we've gone in, but it's gone too far, we can't do it. Well, that was the feelings that went through me. That was the worst news that I could hear. But you're probably getting bored by this time, so I will save the next part for another day. So yeah, thanks for listening. Hope I've not bored you, and I will give you an update on the next one.